Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 10th. Today we celebrate the man who first wrote about the secateurs, and we'll also learn about the Scottish botanist who established the Edinburgh Botanic Garden. We'll hear an excerpt about planting aconites from a garden writer who adored them, and he's one of my favorite garden writers. And we grow that garden library today with a memoir full of charming insights, illustrations, and reflections on gardening. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of the scientist who's remembered for her discovery that stars are made largely of the two lightest chemicals, hydrogen and helium. But she started out as a botanist. But first, here's today's curated news. Well, today's curated news is a treat. We get a chance to explore Butter Wakefield's London garden. This is a post that was shared by Emily Tobin over at House and Garden. And this garden is absolutely delicious. It's one of my favorite gardens, and I am so tickled to see this profile here and to be able to share it with you. Now, like many of my favorite gardens, Butter's garden has taken years to transform. In fact, Butter has spent the past 18 years, almost 2 decades, working on her garden. And it's a little slice of country in London. And that's another reason why I tip my hat to Butter, because that is so difficult to do, to carve out a truly tranquil place in the middle of a city. That's a great accomplishment. Now, this post is image rich. You will see Butter's beautiful outdoor dining area, her topiary, which anyone can do. She loves to incorporate natural elements into her garden, so you'll see her growing out of things like crates. That's right up my alley. I love that. She does a lot of design work with twigs and willow and wood. All of that has a very natural appeal. And in case you're wondering, Butter is a garden designer. And in fact, she grew up right outside of Baltimore in Maryland. And like most gardeners, she learned to garden from her family. Her mother and aunt loved gardens. Her grandfather was a great plantsman. And so Butter is carrying on the tradition. Now, one other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is the beautiful paint color of Butter's door and windows. You'll notice that as you're going through the pictures of her garden, because the house is featured in a lot of these pictures, and that paint color just pops against the brick. It looks like the window is a dark black, and the door is toned down a little bit. It almost looks like a blue-black. Anyway, they're gorgeous. And they look fantastic next to the lushness of the garden. And then, of course, the beautiful brick of the house and the gravel paths. So this is total eye candy today for your curated news, but I thought you would enjoy it, so I hope you get a chance to check it out. If you'd like to take a look at this amazing garden and draw some inspiration, make sure to take a peek in the Facebook group for the show, because I've put a link to it there. Oh, and before I forget, I want to make sure to let you know that Butter's garden features a path that is a lawn path. And every now and then I get that question about using grass as a path. And I love that idea. And Butter does a great job of showing how it can be done to great effect. So make sure to check that out. Now, if you're in the Facebook group, all you need to do is head on up to the very top where the little magnifying glass is and search for the word butter, and this post will pop up. Now, if you're not in the group, don't worry about it. All you need to do is head on up to the search bar where you'd search for a friend, and instead search for Daily Gardener Community and then request to join. And don't forget that this group is entirely free and it's private. So everything you share in the group stays in the group. All right, that's it. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for May 10th. Today is the anniversary of the burial of the English author, translator, and clerk to the kitchen of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Leonard Mascall, who was buried at Buckinghamshire on this day, May 10th, in 1589. Leonard published a number of books. All of them were aimed at household management. In 1572, Leonard published a book of the art and manner, how to plant and graft all sorts of trees. Along with cultivating fruit trees, this book was the very first to refer to the secateurs, or a pruning knife. The secateurs is taken from the Latin secare, or to cut. Leonard's last book was published a year after he died, and it was called The Book of Engines and Traps. In it, Leonard shares 34 traps and 9 recipes for poison baits, most of which were dedicated to trapping mice. But Leonard also wrote about how to control slugs and snails in the garden. He described picking them off by hand early in the morning. Now, while I was researching Leonard Mascall, I came across a bit of his advice regarding the placement of tender trees and shrubs from The Guardian back in December 9th, 1891. Here's what it said. Leonard Mascall said, "Most trees love the sun at noon, and yet the south wind is very contrary against their nature, and specifically the almond tree, the apricot, the mulberry, the fig, and the pomegranate tree." A gardener remarked, "I am sure there is much in this. It's quite certain that all Japanese trees like shade and a north aspect, and the finest, most fruitful old mulberry tree that I have ever seen is at Rochester, growing in a corner where it looks to the north and the east, and is thoroughly protected from the south and the west." And today is the birthday of the botanist, famous professor, and founder of one of the leading botanical gardens in Europe, John Hope, who was born on this day, May 10th, in 1725. Alive during the Scottish Enlightenment, John left his mark on the Royal Botanic Gardens, plant classification, and plant physiology. He was appointed as the King's Botanist for Scotland and the superintendent of the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh. John worked to expand the space of the Royal Botanic Garden, and he turned it into a place for research. During John's lifetime, Edinburgh was the place to study medicine, and all medical students had to take botany courses. John created a school for botanists after spinning off the Materia Medica, or pharmacy, department of the school, and that allowed him to exclusively focus on botany. John's students traveled to Edinburgh from all over the world. All in, John taught over 1,700 students during his tenure, and they included the likes of James Edward Smith, the founder and first president of the Linnean Society, Charles Drayton, a man who would go on to be the lieutenant governor of South Carolina, Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the founder of Dickinson College, and Archibald Menzies, who became the great Scottish botanist and explorer. Now, by all accounts, John Hope was a captivating instructor. He was one of the first 2 people to teach the Linnean system. John also taught the natural system, and he pioneered the use of big teaching diagrams or visual aids to teach his lectures. A field botanist at heart, John encouraged his students to go out and investigate the flora of Scotland, and he awarded a medal every year to the student who collected the best herbarium. With John's accomplishments came impressive wealth. When John died, he'd amassed more than 12,000 pounds, which he left for his wife. Today, the genus Hopea is named after John Hope, and there's a magnificent beech tree that grows near the John Hope Gateway at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh. It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from one of my favorite garden writers, Beverly Nichols, from his book, Down the Garden Path. You cannot have too many aconites. They cost, as I said before, about 50 shillings a thousand. 1,000 will make a brave splash of color, which lasts a month. If you can afford 10,000, you are mad not to buy them. There are so many exciting places you can put them: in the hollow of a felled tree, by the border of a pond, in a circle round a statue, or immediately under your window so that you can press your nose against the glass when it's too cold to go out and stare at them. And remember that spring is on its way. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, My Wild Garden by Meir. This book came out in 2020, and the subtitle is Notes from a Writer's Eden. In this charmingly illustrated book, Meir shares his garden that lies on the perimeter of Israel's Jezreel Valley, with the Carmel Mountains rising up in the west. And Meir's garden is, quote, neither neatly organized nor well kept. And he adores his lemon trees, his figs, and rescuing plants like a purple snapdragon from the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway. Mitch Ginsburg of the Times of Israel wrote this after reading Meir's book. I went to sleep every night with the smell of fresh figs and lemons and the sound of birdsong in my ears, and the image of Meir's beloved black cat, Kramer, the hero of his many Hebrew children's stories, sleeping the day away beneath the buckthorn tree. Meir's book starts out with a little story about the time that he awoke to find a wedding party trampling his garden as they posed for photos. After the group insisted that Meir's garden couldn't possibly be a real garden, he let them know that they had 3 minutes before the sprinkler system turned on. Clever man. They left, and he didn't have a sprinkler system. Well, this book is full of stories like this, and they feature marvelous topics like lupines, cyclamen, poppies, sea squill, a mole rat, a wasp nest, and compost, just to name a few. This book is 304 pages of garden bliss from a novelist who shares his garden with wit and love. You can get a copy of My Wild Garden by Meir and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $21. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It's the birthday of the scientist Cecilia Payne today. She was born on this day, May 10th in 1900. Celia discovered while still in graduate school that stars are made largely of the two lightest chemicals, hydrogen and helium. And Celia decided her fate when she was just 8 years old. That's when she decided to become a scientist. She'd been walking in an orchard when she suddenly recognized a plant that she'd heard her mother describe. It was a plant that looks like a bumble, the bee orchid. Later, Celia recalled her excitement at seeing that plant for the very first time. She wrote, "For the first time, I knew the leaping of the heart, the sudden enlightenment that was to become my passion. These moments are rare, and they come without warning on days to be marked with a white stone." And it's Celia Payne who said these wonderful quotes. "An admission of ignorance may well be a step to a new discovery." And then this one, which harkened back to her discovery of the bee orchid. She wrote, "The reward of the young scientist is the emotional thrill of being the first person in the history of the world to see something or understand something." Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.